This is Alan Baranov. Alan's from DCG 11613 in Melbourne, Australia, or Melbourne, as they pronounce it there. I had to actually ask them how to pronounce that, by the way. Alan is presenting a brief history of GRC. Alan is the founder of DCG 11613 in Melbourne and is a self-proclaimed AAA-rated GRC hacker, having presented similar talks at DefCon Villages and PCI Council events. So with that, take it away, Aldebaran.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's kind of my thing that I'll usually present in Excel, just as it's become almost my trademark. So going to try and do this in Excel, see how it goes. This is a brand new talk, so it's kind of in beta testing at the moment. So hopefully it gives you the good information that you need. Thank you very much to the DCG VR team for having me on here. I haven't been as involved with DCG this year as I would have liked to, but hopefully in the next 12 months, I'll be spending more time with you guys. My name is Alan Baranov. My hacker name is Aldebaran, something I've been using for 30 years now. I'm, as we said, founder of DCG 11613 down in Melbourne, Australia. And started.
Alan, I don't know if you can hear us, but we lost you.
Oh. Am I back again?
Yep, you're back again.
Okay. No idea what's going on. Let me just try to switch to a different network.
I think it's the aggravate the speaker flag in the speaker options.
Well, but for Hoodie, who's streaming, you stayed solid the whole time. So it could be something related to us or something. Who knows?
Okay. I wonder. Okay, let me give me 2 seconds. Let me just try and see if I can.
Australian internet.
Yeah, you seem to be stable at the moment.
All right. Can you?
Yeah, we hear you and see you okay now.
Okay, I just adjusting myself. I'm kind of okay in the middle of nowhere. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so so we started off in 2019. We really got going in 2020, and which was the year of DC28, which is a scary 4 years ago. So this talk is a bit of a view of my life. So hopefully it's not terribly boring. Just I know that we when I was at university, in our kind of graduation ceremony, we had a guy who came to speak about his life, and it was probably the most boring speech I've ever heard in my entire life, because it was just him looking back at his own life, and that was really terrible. I got basically nothing out of it. But I think, I've been around for 30 years. A lot of people ask me, how did you get into cyber? Why GRC? Why did you choose it? And usually, they're expecting a quick answer, which is not an easy thing for me to be able to do because I've got 30 years of experience. And, even in 30 minutes, that's not going to be the easiest thing to do. So let's begin, see how it goes. All right. So one of the things that I'm very interested in is something called BizSec. I think is the future of GRC. I've always said that I want to put this as a slide just to kind of promote the idea. So here it is.
So Alan's still working on the stream. If anybody wants to go to dcgvr.org/stream and go to the YouTube stream.
Yep. Okay. Do I keep disappearing?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Okay, so just a bit about me. So I am a principal consultant at a company called CyberCX. Usually you put the slide up so that people can realize that you're an expert in what you're talking about, but actually I should be, because I'm talking about really my own life and my experiences. So we'll jump across. You're welcome to scan the QR code. It won't give you a Rickroll. This is a Rickroll. And yeah, why GRC? So SANS put out a whole thing about what are the coolest careers in cyber. GRC didn't even make the list. So yeah, the list is like 12. It's got stuff like technical director and security architects on it, but it doesn't have GRC.
Whoa.
So yeah.
It just disappeared. Wow, is my audio not working?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah.
watching, the YouTube stream is still going, so I'm waiting to see if.
Yeah, I'm watching there too.
Okay. Am I still around?
We'll probably pop back in. We're
we could-
patient. Issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're back.
There he is.
Am I back? Okay. Yeah, when I've changed slides, I think I might just have to click back onto the actual browser. And okay. So usually when I present this talk, I do a bit of a Jeopardy. Yes, I have done Hacker Jeopardy inside Excel. It doesn't work in a virtual context, unfortunately. So I'll have to come through to DefCon 1 year and actually present it live. So we'll skip past that. Let's just reset the slides. Hello.
Oh, he's disappeared again.
It really don't like him messing with his slides. He said that, and sure enough.
Yeah.
He should appear any second now.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Any second. There he is.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like I need to. I don't know why it's having issues, but every time I need to change slides, I need to click back into Chrome. But I've learned that now, and we can work with that. So yeah, okay. So I'm going to leave out my childhood, except I was just the classic nerd, glasses, quick learner, had ADHD. So while I could do well at school, didn't really do well at school. Spent most of my time trying to avoid people, which meant spent more time with my VIC-20 and then IBM PC. I had a 286 with a whole meg of memory and 40 megs of hard drive, neither of which DOS could handle. And I had one at my school, had one computer of which I didn't have access to, and I had to go to private school, in which case to learn computers. But I think my story probably starts in earnest in university. So my first year of university was the first year that university opened up access to the internet for undergraduates. It was only open to those that were doing a Bachelor of Science, which I wasn't. But if they're going to use default passwords on all their accounts, then people are just going to be able to use those accounts. In theory, anyway, allegedly. For the first 2 years I was on the internet, it was a playground of about 1,000 students in South Africa. There was no one else there. But things were about to change. At university, I did a BCom, which was a bit of a change of direction for me because I was more technical. But I learned important things that I still use today. So systems thinking, the importance of documentation, how to do negotiation, how businesses work, how the finances work, etc. So all useful things. And yeah, it was definitely well worth doing. One of the things I just wanted to point out is I had a lecturer there that he was a bit different, and he made us think differently. He was probably 20 years ahead of his time. And he taught us stuff like, for instance, the what we call the 9 laws of God.
Lost him again.
Yeah, no,
He's back.
I'm changing slides.
Welcome back.
9 laws of God, which is from Kevin Kelly, which I still use to this day, because it's basically how do you manage chaos, and they're pretty interesting. Some of the stuff that we learned then is he actually asked us, what is a PC? How do you define a PC? And you obviously know what that is, but once someone actually asks you a simple question like that and is like, well, are you sure about that? You start doubting yourself. So, do you have to have storage in a PC? Is that what makes it? What if you separate the pieces? What if one's in the US and one's in, say, Australia? Like, how does that all work? What if you do processing here or whatever? And it was quite interesting. It was about the same time that Sun were introducing Java. And the idea of Java was that you could transport software wherever you wanted to have it. It never quite met those lofty goals, but it was interesting. I think Java, the idea behind Java was similar to what we're seeing with Docker, and there were it really made us think about how things work. While I was at university, I got bitten by 3 bugs, all pretty much related. So I got really into open source.
I think we should just turn it into a drinking game at this point. Every time it happens, take a sip, coffee, whatever you got, but it's a drinking game.
I'm going to be so overdosed on caffeine with that.
Yeah, so I got bitten by the open source bug.
Yeah, well, this is why we're hackers. We improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Yep.
That's why I said I had Chrome, I swapped to Brave, I swapped to Edge, and now it's working.
Yeah, so I I got bitten by the open source bug, and basically got into Linux just basically because I wanted root, and I wanted my own roots, and so I got into that, learned a lot about it, and then at the same time at university got into the internet. The internet was starting, IRC. Which was chatting with people all across the world, which was quite amazing. One of the kind of highlights of that time was going into Dutch IRC and speaking Afrikaans, which is a South African language which is based on Dutch but is not quite Dutch, and being able to talk to people. Kind of learn new cultures, learn new things. One of the more interesting things that came out of IRC were the meetups. So I started a couple of meetups in Johannesburg where I lived, Mostly when friends came up from other parts of the country and we wanted to meet up, I put them together, and then eventually they just grew into something
Oh,
that
okay.
we
Well,
kind of
Alan, we
did.
can't see you for some reason or hear you.
Is there any way someone else can show his slides? Do we have a copy of them? And then he can just talk. Y'all can just switch them for him. Because the problem seems to be with that. If he would release the file or
Oh, he's back now.
Am I back? All right. So what I'll do is I'll just leave the slides out. Then that's fine. They're just there to back it all up. Am I still around? Is everything still okay?
Yep.
Yep, you're doing fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're all good.
You're
All right.
up.
Just let me know. Where did you guys get up to?
You were talking about meetups in Johannesburg.
Yeah. Okay. So you haven't missed too much. Okay. So and then basically we just started doing those on a kind of weekly or monthly basis. And yeah, one of the things that's very that kind of came out of that is the idea that working with people, it's always about the people. Technology is amazing, but what is technology? It's basically the thing that gets us to our people. So at the time, yeah, my first jobs were customer facing. So sitting on phone calls, helping people connect to the internet for the first time. That was an amazing thing to watch them find this new world that they didn't even know
Hey,
existed.
Alan, we lost you again.
If only I was closer, I'd just give him my SIM card and say, "Here you go, pop it in."
Well, it seems like Hoodie's still able to see him, so maybe just keep going and recording it.
Yeah. Okay. It's not actually my internet. My internet seems fine. I'm not sure what it is.
Maybe it's my browser. I'll refresh my browser and see what happens.
All right. So you guys can still hear me?
Yep. I can. The stream can.
Okay. All right. No, that's fine. Okay. So, yeah. So my first jobs were customer facing, sitting on phone calls, helping people connect to the internet. Pretty amazing jobs because basically they teach you how to deal with people, especially like upset people, how to talk to them so that you can both come out with a solution that makes sense to both of you. And also, yeah, the enjoyment that you get when helping people out is something that I still keep with me. My next job was at an ISP. So I was supposed to become a sysadmin, but they offered the job to two people. We both accepted it, and he became the sysadmin. I became everything else. So I was doing IT, bit of sysadmin work, networking. One thing that I had to really do a lot of during that time was read documentation, reading books, reading online, text files, learning stuff all the time. And if anything,
So he's still rolling on the YouTube stream.
if
so
anything,
I should
that's
just
kind
hang
of
out here.
the most kind of important thing or best piece of advice that I can give you. At the time, I was learning all the different tools, little Unix tools and stuff, something that I still keep to this day. The idea that Unix is built out of small tools, each with a single purpose. You pipe them together to get outcomes that are maybe not the intended outcome originally, but that's the whole idea of hacking is to come up with something that may not be exactly what you're expecting. And then, of course, once you get them working, you can script them, you can automate them, you can then go and look for APIs or build them into APIs, et cetera, storing configuration. And it basically made my life at that time a lot easier because I took a lot of the repetitive work out. And that's something that is still important for me today. Okay, so your question at this time is probably, okay, so why GRC? Where does GRC come in? So we haven't got there yet. GRC was not really a thing at this time. And this is basically the prequel. These are the kind of threads that will add together to become how someone became or how I became a GRC person. Back in those days, it was the Wild West. You had antivirus, but most people switched it off because it would slow your PC down. Firewalls existed, but I remember one day when WinNuke came out, I was on a phone call, and basically the guy who I was chatting to, some kids had WinNuke, and he tried it out on my PC and managed to crash my PC while I was trying to help him out. What it turned out was our customer network, the actual modems that connected out to our customers, was actually connected directly to our corporate network. There was no firewall in between them, so they had full access to be able to do whatever they needed on our network. And of course, our PCs were never patched because no one patched in those days. About this time, after this, some of the work that I was doing was creating and deploying solutions, so networking Linux solutions. At the time, our security team, which were basically two guys that knew how to put firewalls together, left, gave no notice. They left on a Friday, and on the Tuesday, they were due to deploy a firewall and had not started any work on it. And so what I essentially had to do was learn firewalls in 3 days so I could deploy the firewall at a client and pretend to be the expert. So that kind of weekend was spent learning firewalls. And back then it wasn't as easy as you think it might be today. I had to get the right hardware, get the right operating system.
Alan, if you can hear us, we lost your audio and your screen too, your presentation.
Am I still there?
All right, you're back now.
I'm back.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so back then, firewalls were not as easy as you may think they were, and they are today. You had to get the right hardware, so it wouldn't run on just any hardware. You had to get like pretty super powered hardware. You had to get an OS and harden it. And set up the networking and the software. You had to understand the networking that you were doing. And I had 3 days to learn it.
We lost you again, Alan.
I did that.
It's really odd. It says he's talking, but we don't see or hear him.
Okay.
It's very odd.
And right now, you may be talking over him, X-Ray. I think it's individual client-based.
He just disappeared. There's no slides, and Alan's not there. Okay, you're back now.
For what it's worth, Alan, I can hear you. The stream can hear you. So the recording can hear you.
Okay. All right. No, that's fine. All right. So I think I'm just going to push through, I guess. So yeah. Okay, so this is the golden age of the firewall. You use basically sandboxes or empty boxes, each which costs thousands of dollars. 3U rack-mounted servers, high availability. They manage NAT, your mail, your VPNs, web proxying. And there were two trends that were happening that were going to basically make firewalls less important. The Jericho group came out with the analogy of chewy mints. So the idea that you had a crunchy outside and chewy inside was your network. So your firewalls were very strong and protective, but as soon as someone got inside your network, they could do whatever they wanted. And that's pretty much where we are today. With the idea of phishing and trying to get things on the inside connecting out on your own behalf or on the attacker's behalf. The other thing that was happening was everything became HTTP. So trying to block specific services on a firewall became quite pointless. And everything slowly became encrypted. And so the firewall didn't actually really see what the traffic was. And now that they become, they're still important, but they're not everything. The other thing that was happening at this time was Microsoft were kind of in trouble. Open source was really good. The LAMP stack, so Linux, Apache, MySQL, and Perl, is what everyone was using. It was all free software. It really worked very well. Set and forget, and so that's pretty much what it was all about. Microsoft were trying to push the idea of Windows and IIS, but that wasn't really working out for them. And one of the issues that they had, the biggest issue that they had, was the perception that Windows was not secure. You had pretty much 5 minutes if you put an IIS server on the internet before it would be taken over. And this was around about 2001, the year of Code Red and NIMDA, which basically were, vulnerabilities and attacks that showed just how bad the coding was behind Windows. And at this time, Bill Gates, who was then the CEO of Microsoft, wrote a memo to say, hey, security is important. We need to take it important. And it is probably one of the most important things that happened in security. It established your Patch Tuesday. It got Microsoft involved in the security world, accepting vulnerabilities, addressing vulnerabilities. And of course, I'm not going to say Bill Gates was the guy who did everything, but the fact that it came from the top established that, security was important. And there were some very, very smart people at Microsoft that took security really seriously. Their products started rolling out with their features disabled or tools that could be used to lock them down. And yeah, I realized that I'm praising a vendor at DefCon, and of all vendors, I'm praising Microsoft. But you can only imagine what the world would look like if this security had never happened. And the thing is, IT departments will do the best with what they have, and usually, security is not something that they're specifically looking out for. And the easier you can make their lives, the better. And being able to plan their month around last Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month, means that they can work out when to actually deploy stuff and do it around the rest of everything, and they can make everything else work around that. 2003, which is kind of the end of my first decade, was when the Slammer worm was introduced. It was basically, I think, the lowest of the low in terms of information security. It was basically a tiny worm that affected only SQL servers, and 75,000 servers were affected on day one, which is quite a scary number, because if you consider the fact that the way it propagates is from someone's SQL server speaking to someone else's SQL server, which, why would your SQL server ever need to speak to another organization's SQL server? It doesn't. And so it kind of showed us that, everything was broken. And there was a lot of work that we needed to do. And firewalls, they weren't everything. And especially if they were allowing worms through in the most simple manner. One of the things that I haven't talked about is the I love you bug, a Trojan, and that kind of pushed the world towards, hey, you know what? If you want to get behind a firewall, Trojans are the way to do it. And yeah, he's kind of established phishing as a viable attack. And that is the first decade. So the second decade is kind of where enter the men in black. And this is where things get a little bit boring. Financial auditors started noticing their computers are getting used more and more for storing financial information. They want to audit them because it's the right thing to do. But also, of course, because there's money to be made. The big five at this time were ready to get in on the action. And this is where the ISF gets big, as well as ISACA. So ISACA introduced the COVID controls. And it was a bit of an awkward time because it's two groups that didn't really know each other very well, had very different ways of working. So you're looking at your kind of traditional auditors that come in and expect that, they've got their list of things that they're looking at and it should just work. You have your IT people where, it's basically taping chaos to more chaos and hoping for the best. And these are just the two different groups that didn't really work really well together. And then, of course, in some cases, if you had a security team, they would sit between them and try and work it all out. ISACA at this time introduced risk and came up with the lofty ideas like ALEs, which is your annualized loss expectancy, which is a nice idea and would really be quite amazing if it wasn't totally and utterly impractical, which is where you take the chance of something happening, which is your likelihood, and work out what the cost will be and work out each year what the chance of everything happening is going to be. And that comes out with exactly how much money you're expecting to lose if you get hacked. And then, of course, what you'll do is you'll just basically take that number, spend less than that, and you've actually made some money out of it. But it's basically, I guess, times a guess divided by how many years you expect things should happen. And essentially, you're guessing numbers. And once you're guessing numbers, you might as well just use different ways of working at how much to spend on security. They also at the same time came out with COVID and, of course, ways to manage it and audit it, which was your CISA and CISM. And that's still about. ISACA is still going, and with their CISA and CISM. Also enter King George V and Sir John Wolfe Barry. So John Wolfe Barry, who designed the London Bridge, he created an organization to create standards, and he called which was called the BSI. King George V gave it a royal charter. So basically, hey, yeah, no, that's fine. As the king would like you to make standards. And so that's kind of how the BSI got started. One of the British standards, which they then created many, many years later, was British Standard 7799, which was the Code of Practice for Information Security Management. And that essentially became an international standard after a lot of companies adopted it, including South Africa and Australia. And then once it became the international standards, it eventually got renumbered to 27,002, not 1. So they tacked on a part to it originally, and because it was kind of like, we have these ways of doing stuff, but we don't have a process around it. Can you quickly put a process together? So they tacked on a process, and that became 27,001, which is what we know as ISO 27001 today. They also created part 3, which is how to measure risk. and that became 27,005. But they've removed it because it's almost identical to 31,000. And yeah, no point in having two of them. One which is just very specific to IT. So that's kind of what was happening around that time. Standards were getting updated and important. People were starting to look at them. Where was I? So I was doing firewalls. But I'd also worked out how to manage them. Firewalls were becoming less complex, easier to manage. I had more time on my hands. So the company that I was working with, I said, hey, do you want some help working out how to speak to the auditors? And they were quite keen on that because I had some IT knowledge. And so I started working with the IT team to get some stats behind what they were doing. And then realizing how much work there was, we put some plans together to get things working better. And then at the same time, I started getting interested in policies and standards and put a few of those together. And once that had happened, started working with what was then the ISO 17799, which was kind of halfway between 7799 and 27002. And then things exploded. I started doing pretty much all the security work, and more and more security work was actually starting to move into the security department. So I was running around. I was monitoring and fixing how the patching was working and improving antivirus, making sure that users couldn't switch off their antivirus, finding where all the different laptops were that weren't running antivirus and getting it installed, fixing the user management process, doing risk assessments against projects, vulnerability scans, and then tying that back to the patching. I was doing pen tests, light pen tests, and then arranging more thorough pen tests with our pen testers that we were using. I was still managing the firewalls, doing CAB meetings, managing audits, watching logs and investigating incidents. I was eyes and glass, basically myself. I was the SOC. Arranged data for the risk team, doing strategy and also proof of concepts. So I was trying to roll out DLP and NAC. Also at the same time editing the policies and standards and the procedures. I was doing awareness, including the induction. I was managing my budget. I was presenting to the CFO on a monthly basis, the CEO quarterly, and then the board annually. And then in my spare time, I was doing a blog and keeping up to date with the people who were blogging at the time. The people that are really, really smart, and I still keep in touch with them because they are still driving everything around the industry. And at the same time, I was slowly starting to become a speaker, and that was probably the best thing I ever did. I absolutely love speaking. It's my favorite hobby. It gives me access to the most amazing people, and it usually goes off quite nicely, except sometimes you do have technical difficulties. And that was kind of where I ended up in my second decade, pretty much doing everything all the time, and as an island. And then to celebrate, I decided, let's have a change of pace. So I packed up my family and moved us from South Africa to a desert island. And g'day, welcome to Australia, mate, is where I ended up. So here I am in Melbourne. And I think this kind of ended my second decade and kind of is where security just became too big. As I said, there was a lot I was doing, and up to this point I could do it all. But I wasn't doing a great job of all the different pieces. I was doing enough. And so I think at this point is when the ideas of code review and pen testing and user management and policy management and incident response and awareness and stuff, they all became specializations of their own. And it was becoming impossible for me to keep up with all of them, even though I was trying as hard as I possibly could. And the one question that all the employment agencies were asking me at the time, because now I'd moved to a new country, no one knew me. I was kind of well known in South Africa because I was very involved in the community. But in Australia, no one knew me at all. And the one question that I kept getting asked was, what is your speciality? And I had no speciality. I did everything. I was interested in everything. I wanted to do everything. And so basically, that's what I told them. And I didn't really get very much in the way of jobs because no one believed me that, I was doing everything. So essentially, I was like, well, you know what? Probably GRC, or the management of the policies and the management of the processes. Is pretty much where I am at the moment, and that's where I got that's what I got involved with once I hit Australia. As an aside, at this time, 2013 was when the big Target hack happened. So Target got attacked, and had 40 million credit cards stolen. And basically Target had to pay just short of $20 million worth of fines for that. It happened through a third party, even though they had firewalls and stuff in place, that they were totally ineffective. And that's when PCI DSS became quite important, because organizations were like, well, we're not paying $20 million in case we get hacked. What can we do? And the credit card industry were like, here's what you can do. And so that's when PCI became the kind of standard that everyone was looking at. I absolutely love it. It's the standard that I work the most with. It's my favorite because it's not kind of a framework. It's actually specific controls. It tells you what you need to do, and because it's created by an organization that has skin in the game, it's done really well. And people talk about the tail wagging the dog and how compliance should just, exist. Security should just happen, and compliance should just be there to say, hey, this is what we're doing. It's a nice idea, but every organization I work with don't really meet even the basic requirements of PCI, which in some cases are really, really basic. And I think, so in terms of GRC, I think we've got a bit of a way to go. And hopefully, my talk has given you a bit of an understanding as to how we got here. How did we actually get to where we are right now? And some of the things that I hope you picked up, we are making it up as we go along. There's no real experts in terms of security. We've been around for 30 years, but in terms of GRC, it's been around for a while, but mainly just really the last 10 years, which is pretty much nothing if you think about how long other industries have been around for. Community is important. Find your people, find your local group, work with them. If you're working in security, make sure you're improving. It's always going to be chaotic, but as long as you get the small improvements over time, you will see the results. And people, it's all about people. People have helped me out over time. I've had some good managers, some good bosses, and a lot of people that have helped me to get where I am today, and I'm very grateful about that. And also, I try to give back, and so should you. Get involved, do presentations, write a blog, tweet, go onto LinkedIn, read, learn, improve yourself, improve your world. And hopefully that's that. And yeah, are there any questions? I'm going to try get back to everybody so everyone can see me and see if there's any questions.
Any questions for our speaker?
The last time I did a talk on GRC, I did an entire presentation of like 30 minutes long, and then eventually the first question was, what is GRC? Okay, so GRC generally is governance, risk, and compliance. And it's just a term for the kind of management at a high level of what security does. And a way to let other organizations know exactly what it is that you're doing, as well as for organizations to be able to discuss amongst each other what the expectation is. So I'll ask the first question and answer it. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
What type of person, like what kind of personality do you think turns to GRC over, say, like I know I'm interested in like diving deep into something, finding vulnerabilities and everything. So how would you describe the average like GRC enthusiast?
That's a really good question. So
that's the question, and stream is gone again.
Okay.
GRC over.
Okay, so that's a really good question. As I said, like earlier, the kind of Men in Black idea where you have auditors coming in and they're financial auditors and stuff. I think that's how it used to be. I work with a team of GRC specialists, and we are all individually very, very different people. The idea that it's very similar to financial auditing, I think, is how it used to be. I think it's changed, and now you're starting to look at people who are very much almost like the hacker mentality, where it's kind of a case of people that are interested in a specific topic and want to dig as deep as they possibly can into it. People that are, let's try and build something that makes sense. You have to be someone who can communicate nicely. You have to be someone that is able to sit and read documentation or write documentation. And someone who looks for patterns. So if someone's telling you something and you're not quite sure whether it makes sense or not, the ability to dig deeper. But quite honestly, the answer to that really is there are a lot of different people in GRC. Some of us are technical. But some of us are not as technical, are more at peace talking to people and understanding how things work by actually doing interviews. And some people are very good with reading through documentation, finding issues, and working through those. So yeah, that's a really good question. I guess the answer is as because I'm a consultant. I'll give you the standard consultant answer. It depends. Any other questions?
I'm just catching up with the answer on YouTube.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Well, we may have figured out what was causing the problem. Apparently, your slides were still being shown in the green room. And so it might have caused a little confusion for Frame.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now I heard it all.
Okay.
I know, so I guess there's different types everywhere, but like, I wanted to get like, what's the core values that drive someone to GRC essentially?
Cool.
It's a very interesting answer.
Yeah. Okay. So core values probably. I think GRC more than any other part of information security, and in my talk basically I said, hey, listen, until about 10 years ago, information security was one big thing, and now there's all the different specializations, and they're kind of working out what they are and where they should fit. I think GRC is the biggest, like it's the one that covers the most ground. And so if you're someone who's interested in everything and likes to see how everything fits together, that's probably where you'll find that you'll be most interested in GRC, because you'll understand how everything fits together from that kind of high level view, as opposed to digging deep into incident response, learning how like things work at a packet level or whatever, or hacking into kind of Windows boxes, or learning how AD works or whatever. GRC is more of a
thank you,
is more of a
Alan,
generalist
for
thing.
the excellent presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still.
I'm still here. Yeah, no, it's all good. But yeah, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I'll kind of be around for a little bit. So if anyone does have any more questions, you can come speak to me. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer you.
Yeah, no, I heard the answer now. It kind of made me think like of in the old Chinese wars, they had like the war strategists moving the soldiers around on the battlefield, just taking a view from above. So that's the impression I got after your answer.
Yeah. And that's quite right. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
I was curious what you think will be occurring with AI. Do you see a lot of movement in your department?
Sorry, someone asked you a question, but you were not in the audio zone, Alan, so you didn't hear.
Yeah, no, I didn't get the question. I think it was Bobby that was talking.
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering how you think things are going to change in the future for your position when it comes to AI. What do you see in the future when it comes to regulations and things we should do with the modernization and how quickly it's evolving?
Yeah, good question. So there's a few things there. So, there's multiple things that we need to look at. So number one, will it change how we do work? Probably, because a lot of as I said, a lot of the work that we do is going through documentation, especially if you're an assessor. So, has this organization been able to meet what they say that they do? Okay, so what do they say they do? AI can very definitely help you out with that.
Damn it.
And also in terms of sharing of data, sharing of information, we need to be very clear about how we're going to share and how we what kind of information is okay to share and how that's going to work. So we already at our organization have an AI policy of how we can share information, which in most cases is like no, like it's just basically, and it was pretty much the same as when cloud came out. The answer was no, we're not interested in cloud. But over time, as the controls get stronger, you might be able to use AI more and more to do your work. And then, of course, how does the rest of the organization use AI? And I think I think at the moment the answer is it's going to be important. It looks like it's going to be a very useful tool. And for us to just say blankly, no, you can't, is not going to be useful. So the question is, we just have to keep an eye on how it's working, and get an understanding of the different controls, and get an understanding of, well, at least be able to say, hey, you know what, you can use it, but here's what our expectations are. I don't think we're there quite yet, but I think we're getting there. I think we have a good idea of what we want, at a very, very high level, and now it's just a case of working out the details of what we want to see. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, I'm going to take myself off whatever megaphone. And yeah, if there's anyone that does want to ask me questions or want to chat, I'm around.